I've always loved the library, been going religiously since I was a kid. Finding new stories, the characters and their lives, incredible new worlds, all of which start life as a thought in the writer's brain. There's something kind of magical about it, I think. So I'm a regular at the library in my city. It's a fairly large building with a modern architectural design, so nothing majestic. I hate to sound like a snob, but it would have been nice for the city to have a library that would complement the works inside of it. But I can't complain too much, as it does have one quirk that I like. Inside, and only in the basement, are long passages of medium-sized rooms where rows of bookshelves lead the way to the next door and the next room with more of the same. It's so peaceful in there, once the door is closed, you feel like you have your own private part of the building. I must have explored every inch of that place, the parts that are open to the public anyway. I could happily get lost in it, or so I used to think. Something happened recently, something I can't explain. It was last Saturday morning, and I was walking between the bookshelves that lead me through each room. There weren't many people around at that time, but I could hear all the usual sounds of people picking up books, flipping through the pages, or just walking around and trying to keep busy. Maybe looking for something to catch the eye, which in a way is what I was doing. There's so many famous titles out there that are worth reading, but sometimes it's nice to take a chance on something unknown. So many options surrounding me, but in my search, one stuck out to me. A small book, almost like a journal. The once pristine pale leather, now worn and splitting. I didn't know if it was supposed to be out here just on a shelf and open to the public. Seemed like the kind of fragile thing you'd want to have locked up for safekeeping. Maybe someone had left it out by mistake? I carefully picked it up, its binding crackling softly under the gentle pressure of my grasp. I held it for a moment, examining it for what an odd find it was. It sounds silly, but I didn't know if I should open it. Some of these are really old, and one mishandling can destroy the whole thing. But part of me felt like if it had been placed and left here, even accidentally, then maybe it was okay. Gently I opened the front cover. Nothing. No verification or date stamps. It was blank. The pages were a tea-stained pale brown, almost yellow. I was going to keep looking, but a noise on the other side of the bookshelf in front of me startled me. Someone was walking hurriedly down the aisle. I thought it best just to close the book and bring it to the front desk, just in case it was there by mistake. I started making my way back, once again not really watching where I was going, but looking at all the books up and around me. Passing through one door to another. There were so many. They just went on and on and on. I couldn't understand it. I should have been out by now, but no. Just doors and bookshelves over and over again. I kept moving, thinking I must have been mistaken, but it was all too surreal to actually be real. No matter how much I walked, how far I think I went, there was just more and more of the same. I couldn't find my way out. I passed through one more and then stopped walking. I needed to get my thoughts straight. Did I fall asleep? I didn't feel asleep. If not, then where was I? It was only when I took a closer look at the books themselves, things went from bizarre to creepy. All of the books had changed. No longer were they a wash of dark and bright colours, but instead, a never-ending mix of brown and black leather. I ran my hand across the row in front of me. Some were new and smooth, others old and cracked, just as the one I was holding. I held it up and stared at it for a moment. What was this thing? I was about to open it, but the sound of a door closing somewhere in front of me caught my full attention. Moving towards the direction as fast as I could, desperately passing through each door, not even bothering to close them, looking past each break in the bookshelves, hoping to see a hidden door behind them I might have missed. I can't tell you how many rooms I passed through, but it didn't matter. As I passed through the final one, I noticed something different about this new room. The shelves were still full of the same books, the walls that dull white paint. It was the door. It looked wrong. Completely out of keep with the others down here. It was once nicely carved, but now unkempt, cracked, unloved. The handle was metal and chipped. I really didn't want to go through. Everything about it warned, stay out. But what if it was the way out? The handle was cold and coarse to the touch. Slowly I bent it down and opened the door. The lights flickered in the room, most of which was filled with piles of loose papers. No shelves, no other door. But there at the far end of the room was a person, I think. At a writing desk she sat hunched over. I say she, but couldn't say for certain. Tall and thin with long hair. The voice as well, soft yet erratic, speaking to herself constantly, and never for a moment taking a pause to catch her breath or change her tone. Her right hand would write something, the left would move the finished paper into a stack, grab a new piece of paper to start over. She would quickly dip the index finger of her right hand into an ink pot and go right back to scratching at the paper. I didn't want to go in there, so I quietly closed the door and backed away. I kept this up, getting as far away as I could from that room. For the first couple of passages, I kept facing the same direction, only taking my eyes off it briefly to check where the door handle was behind me. At one point, I finally felt comfortable enough to turn my back to it. It was only when I was no longer focused on that person that I realized I was still holding that old book. I was tempted to throw it onto one of the shelves that cased me in, but before I did, I thought I saw something on its cover. I really had to squint to see it, as it was so faded and frayed. Pressing down the cracked lever, I could see there was something there. It looked like a drawing. Like a woman or a mermaid? I ran my finger across it, felt the texture on my skin. That's when I realized it wasn't a drawing at all. It was a tattoo. The realization freaked me out, and in a moment of panic, I threw the book on the floor. The book landed upside down and open. Several of its pages were crumpled up, but out from those pages came voices. Or maybe one voice? It was hard to tell if they were all the same or different, as they spoke together. Some were laughing, others screaming. The noise filled up the room. It was horrifying. I covered my ears at the first sound of it, but soon forced myself to pick it up. As soon as I closed it, the voices stopped. The silence was a relief. Bang. It came from behind me. Bang. Another. Bang. There was something more to the loud, sudden noises, like moaning or growling. It was her. She knew I was in here, and now she was coming. I started running. There was no time for quiet anymore, I just had to run. Door after door, I kept passing through endless copies of near-identical rooms, and that thing was getting louder. She was so close, I swear I could hear the clicks of the door handles opening behind me. Please, 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 is all I was thinking each time I reached a door. One of them had to lead to a way out. Click. There it was. I could hear it. The last door I'd closed was now opening. Her horrible voice crawled towards me. I turned and saw her tall, thin, looming body, seemingly gliding towards me. Her hair covered her face and her arms outstretched in front of her and set on me. I made it to the end of the room and grabbed a hold of the door handle, ripping it open, and turned to look at her one last time. She was a matter of feet away. In my desperation, I screamed and threw the book at her. As it hit her and dropped to the floor, she kept up her charge. I heaved the door closed as fast as I could. She was almost in reach of the other side. I pulled it to, heard the click of the latch, and held on with all my might. Tears streaming down my face, I was crying out in anger and fear. "Are you okay?" A worried voice came from behind me. I turned and saw the faces of 2 men and a woman standing near the basement steps of the city library. I ran over to them. I can only imagine how I looked. Through my panicked gasps, I told them that someone was chasing me. The woman held me, and one of the men stayed near, while the second man cautiously moved to the door. After a moment of what I figured was him psyching himself up, he threw the door open and checked out the room from the outside. When the creature didn't burst out, he stepped inside and inspected the room. It was clear, but most importantly, I was out. The rest of that day was spent filing out reports, being asked questions I didn't know how to answer. I didn't tell them the whole truth, of course. Just some tall, junky-looking lady had chased me through the basement. Stayed with some friends for a couple of days, but I was actually pretty happy to get home. Haven't touched any of my books yet, though. I want to make sense of everything, I just don't know how. I miss the library, but I'm not ready to go back there yet. It's all still so raw right now. Where was I? That thing, what was she doing there? Who was she? What was she writing in those books?